Hi, everyone. Lisa and Dan here from Fireside Strategic. We're on a mission to help business leaders achieve great results through human-centered strategy and sales. In the Fireside Chat series, we're celebrating leaders who unite strategic and human thinking and leadership. Right now, we're excited to be chatting with Sohail Khan, the joint venture expert. Sohail, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so the joint venture expert, that's a pretty sexy title. Can you explain to our audience what that means? Who are you?
Well, basically, I started off as an accountant, as a management consultant many years ago. And, I normally tell my story in terms of how I became the joint venture expert. And, I literally started off in a field that basically I was put into by family, to be honest with you. And in my culture, one of the things that families look at is to become, a professional, either a doctor, attorney, lawyer, a spaceman, or they go to that extremes. And I spent most of my time studying and then becoming a professional. Obviously, then becoming a management consultant. And something that I didn't really enjoy in the aspect, it was something that I was good at and I had certain skills. And my supervisor actually told me to branch out because I was really good at IT. I was really good at computers. So I spent most of my time helping people use the internet. And when the internet was launched early on, I literally left and I set up an IT company, my own business, and I built that company very successfully to 8 figures, doing just joint ventures. And that was one of the things that really got me into this space. And it all started from a book that I picked up, a book by a guy called Jay Abraham, Getting All You Can Out of All You've Got. And that was what really put me down the path of doing joint ventures. It was this notion and this idea of how you could create something from nothing. Basically, how you can go out there and create partnerships with other companies and allow them to market and promote you without actually spending money up front yourself. So it was something that I started off doing. I built a very successful 8 figure business. And then I sold that business in 2006 to a large IT group, 200 million IT group. And that was in 2006. And then in 2008, that business went bust. So basically, I went from being a multi-millionaire to totally broke because I sold a majority stake to this large group. And then in 2008, I set myself a challenge. And I said, look, I need to get back on my feet. And I was very fortunate enough in 2009, I did one huge joint venture that made me just over $1.5 million in 30 days. And after that, I was called the joint venture expert. I started speaking all around the world. And this is how I became known as the joint venture expert today.
Super cool. Love that you've succeeded going with the road less traveled. I'm curious about why it is the road less traveled. If you can achieve so much without spending money on advertising, without doing all these usual things people do to grow businesses, why is it so neglected?
It's just taking the leap. I think a lot of people, it's the confidence and also having the knowledge to be able to do joint ventures and strategic alliances. A lot of people have tried and a lot of people have failed, but I think it's just the process. And I think it's an individual person as well. I think you have to have that commitment. Communication skills are key also. And you've got to have that belief as well. And a lot of people have tried going out and do strategic partnerships, and people have been successful. In the corporate space, they do a lot of strategic alliances, but that's more in terms of that, mergers, acquisitions, and that's all on a huge level. But on the small business space, a lot of companies do actually do partnerships, and they don't know that they're actually doing joint ventures. So this is something that people should be doing regularly, and especially right now in terms of the current economic climate we're going through. More than ever, people are need this. People need to go out and partner with other enterprises, other companies,
Yes.
and also collaboration should be key right now.
Yes. Totally agree that this is a perfect opportunity for people to build relationships. And sensitive to one of the words you used there was belief, which I thought was very interesting. You need to have, is it fair to say that you need to have some belief in your own value? Because in business, people partner with you only if you have value to provide.
Correct. And I think belief plays a lot in everything we do in life, to be honest with you, whether it's belief that you can do something, belief whether people will work with you, belief in what you have to offer. So I think it's very important. And obviously that comes down to also the right mindset. building your mindset to be able to achieve those things, especially the things that I've achieved, over the years. I built 2 8-figure businesses and cashed out twice, actually using the same process. The second time I did it, I partnered with actually one of my strategic partners, who was a large sales consultancy in North America, and I sold my consultancy to them in 2017 for 8 figures. So I've used that process and that technique many times, and I find that partnering with large organizations or even competitors, which people don't even
Yes.
think about. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't think
Yeah.
about partner with competitors. It gives you an edge, because sooner or later that joint venture partner will want a bigger piece of the pie, and they'll want 100% of the pie. And then eventually it will come to a situation where they will actually approach you and say, look, we just want to buy you out. So what is it going to cost us to buy out this partnership? So I think, the process behind strategic alliances and joint venture partnerships goes much further than what people class as a standard joint venture. So, and this is what really excites me about it. And, I've been retired twice. I'm semi-retired right now, and you won't get me off this horse. Basically, this horse, I'll stay on this horse as long as I can, because it really excites me, and it's the only thing, to be honest with you, that really excites me about showing people, teaching people, and proving to them that this concept of strategic alliances, collaborations, and joint ventures is something that everyone should be doing and including within their marketing strategy.
I love that. You said something interesting in that small businesses and medium-sized businesses often don't even realize that they should be forming joint ventures. So if you're the CEO of a small or medium-sized company and you could use, some support, some help, how would you even start to think about whether you should be forming a joint venture?
I think it all comes down to complementary. That's what the basis of a joint venture is, and thinking about what other entities can you partner with. Now, it's interesting because you can also partner with your own suppliers. The thing is, right, the biggest thing with joint venture partnerships is getting access to other people's customers or other people's resources. So if you already have a relationship in place, that is the best way and the quickest way. And that's what I always teach, whether it's my students who go on to become certified joint venture brokers, or whether it's my clients. I say, look, seek out those existing relationships you already have first to go and test the waters with joint ventures. And people don't realize that, companies and corporations who have suppliers, they can be joint venture partners too. And also, like I mentioned, having competitors and working with competitors. And I'll give you an example of this. Okay, a real cool example. I used to run a company that used to do just e-learning, right? So a lot of people used to approach us. We used to generate leads, and those people wanted online learning. But we used to also get people coming to us who wanted classroom-based learning. We didn't offer that. So what did we do? We partnered with our competitors and said, hey guys, you do classroom-based, we do online. If you have any people who have come to you for online, let us have those leads or let us have those prospects, and we'll gladly give you referrals of prospects that we have for classroom based. So this is one of the ways that we work together with all of our competitors in the space. So it's quite interesting, the sort of the dynamics of how far you can stretch joint ventures.
Makes sense. So it sounds like you're building essentially a system and it works together. What's the impact on the bottom line if you're going to be going the joint venture route?
The thing with the impact on the bottom line is it costs you nothing up front. So there is no initial cost. That's the beauty of it. It's costing you nothing. There's no marketing cost. There are no costs. Basically, the cost is your time to go out and find strategic partnerships or look at your existing relationships and get them to basically promote your product or service for free. And then obviously you pay them a percentage of any sales made. But the beauty is you only pay on results. Whereas with standard marketing, you're throwing money at the wall, and you're just waiting for it to stick and see what works and what doesn't. That is the thing. That's why I think joint venture partnership should always be one arsenal in your marketing strategy, and it should be something that you should be doing constantly in addition to whatever else you're doing to grow your company.
Makes total sense. Picking up on this relationship point, if relations are vital in order to be able to do a good joint venture, what do you do if you're the sort of person who maybe you've been bankrupt, right? Maybe you run into a hard situation and you don't have many relationships. You don't see too many possibilities, so it's hard to have belief. Is there any relationship building advice you could give for someone in a situation like that?
That's a really good question, and that really the simple answer for that is to actually learn how to create new relationships. Now, the only way you can do that is by going out there and putting yourself out there. Now, one of the ways to do this is via social media, for example. Now, LinkedIn would be a perfect platform for that. But I think what you have to also understand is sometimes you have to have something to offer before you ask for something in return. So one of my mottos in life is always give first, ask later. And I've built very, very strong relationships from when I first started in terms of, not having anything, any fundamental collateral really, to going out there and partnering with very, very well-known marketers in the space. So that's what I would definitely recommend and I would advise is to do that by giving first. And then there's something called the law of reciprocity. There's a book called The Psychology of Influence, great book by Robert Cialdini, I think that's his name. Yeah, and he says basically that as human beings, we like to reciprocate basically. So if someone does something for us, we have that notion and intention that we'd like to do something in return. So the law of reciprocity is where you use that strategy and that process to build those relationships by giving first to people and then asking for return. So that's another way you can do it.
That makes so much sense. One thing that I really love about the way that you're describing this is it makes so much sense. It's so obvious, yet so few people do it. And the advice you give is beautifully straightforward. I'm curious, like, what is it about you as a person? Why do you feel that you've had these personality traits that have allowed you to take these risks and go into this unknown space? Like, who's the human behind all these incredible achievements?
Well, first of all, I think it might be the accent works really well. That's what people say.
Always help.
But no, yeah, it always does. But secondly, I think it's my journey. It's what I've been through. I think for me, and I'll be honest with you, when I was a lot younger, I was very egocentric. I was the type of person that wanted to have everything: the big headquarters, the big mansion, the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, the whatever it is. And I think for me, when I ended up losing everything, and I mean I lost everything, it really changed my viewpoints, and it really changed the way I conducted myself, and it really changed my mindset. So for me, having that loss earlier on, I think for me it was a good thing because it allowed me to go into the world with nothing to lose, right? And to go out and go basically go full out and play full out, okay, in terms of not only learning this process, not only learning these strategies, but going out and doing as much as I can. Also, I'm big on testing. I would always go out there and test things consistently. And the things that don't work, I'll drop them instantly. And the things that work, I would document them. And I have a group of joint venture brokers that I train, and I do it because I want to be a shining example to them, and I want to show them that I'm always ahead of the pack, basically. So I can show them that, look, this is what you can achieve, and this is what can be done, and this is the way to do it. So I'm always consistently learning and always achieving whatever I can, to be a shining example, really, and make sure that other people benefit from what I do. So I guess that's the answer.
I'm hearing on the one hand, it's a very interesting answer because I'm hearing on the one hand an emphasis on belief. You need to believe in yourself and the value you bring to set up joint ventures, but I'm also hearing about the importance of humility. And so
Yes.
It's so interesting that there's this balance between confidence and humility. They might seem at first glance to be in opposition to one another, but you can and must have both.
I agree, and I think from our first conversation, we spoke about a lot of the spiritual elements and a lot of elements of being a human being, and sort of grounding yourself, but also finding yourself. And I think people go through a journey. Now, I've met a lot of successful people. I mean, I've got a couple of mentors who are actual billionaires. So I have conversations with them all the time, and I learn a lot about the process. I learn a lot about, like you said, humility, and I learn a lot about how they think. So I think it's very, very important to be successful in business, but also be successful without the business. So I think there's two elements, there's two sides to every coin. So I think if you really, really want to be successful in this game, learn to be that shining example as a human being, but also the shining example as a leader for others to follow in your business as well.
Can you elaborate on that? I mean, it's how is it that this spiritual, which to some people, the spiritual dimension of life may seem abstract and hard to understand and kind of woo-woo, right?
Okay.
Can you
Well,
elaborate on how does that affect
I will.
business?
I will.
Yeah.
I will. It all comes down to having a belief system, right? Because
Mhm.
when I lost everything, I held on to that belief system, right? So you got to
Mhm.
have a foundation where it doesn't have to be religious, okay? It has to be some sort of belief system that allows you to hold on regardless of what's happening around you, right? So how do I explain this? I always say to people that if I passed away today, I would not have any regrets because my life has been amazing, even with the good and the bad. But I think you've got to focus always on the positive than the negative. And I always say to people, if more people thought about the positive things in their life or the positive things in their day, then there'd be less negative people. But I think that's the problem. A lot of people think, oh, this is wrong, that's not right. A lot of people
Mhm.
don't really focus on, and one little thing, it doesn't have to be huge. It could be that cup of coffee I had this morning was amazing, or that whatever I had this today was really great. So I think you have to install that firing of that positivity within yourself. And a lot of people hate me for it because they say, "Look, you're always positive. Whenever, even when bad things happen, you turn a negative into a positive." And I think it's just the way you have to rewire your brain, and you have to look at it at a different direction and a different angle. So when the world is panicking, you're not, because you're thinking of what is good coming from this pandemic or from the panicking. What are people not focusing on? So I think that's basically what I do a lot of. So
I think that's beautiful. It's very powerful skill set,
mm,
and a very
very
powerful
powerful.
mindset
Yeah,
to look at the
yeah.
positive. So to build on what you actually mentioned about the pandemic. So this has been a pretty crazy time, to
Very
say the
crazy. Yeah,
least. And the
yeah.
pandemic has really blown up, the world, including the world of business and
Mm.
JVs. What has your experience been over these past few months? Like, what has changed in your life and your work? And how is it going to be impacted in the future as we climb out
It's
of this?
interesting. In end of February, I was in Las Vegas, and doing my boot camp, which I do there a couple times a year. And I was sitting in my hotel room and I was watching the TV, and then downstairs people were talking about this thing, coronavirus, and oh, it's not going to be big, it's not going to be huge, it's going to be contained, it's just going to be this, and it's like people are thinking what's happening. And then I left Vegas in March, and I came down to London to see my family in London. And then I basically got stuck here because the US, Trump decided to ban London from traveling, anyone from London traveling to the US, and which is understandable because of the pandemic. So it made us all think, okay, so what is happening right now in the world? And it's pretty serious because it's affected a lot of people, a lot of business owners, for example. And I really feel sorry for businesses that were not prepared. They've literally gone under. And when they had the lockdowns happening, that's affected so many businesses. And the big corporations are okay; they have money. They can claim handouts and what have you. But the smaller businesses, they're still suffering. Because the thing is, they're losing employees. That's the problem. They're losing staff. Staff probably won't come back, and people don't want to come back. People don't want to come back and work in similar situations, and then the businesses are having problems as well. But what I found was the huge increase in online retention. I was like, wow, when you looked at things like Zoom, for example, which we're using right now, they just blew it out of the water. You see the uptick of users in terms of before the pandemic and right now, it's astronomical, right? So then you look at that and you think, okay, there are opportunities out there. So for example, with us, what we did was we had a boot camp scheduled in July, which we had to cancel. So we went online and we did it online, and we actually made more money doing it online than we would have done physically over a 3-day boot camp. Now I don't really, I prefer I prefer the face to face. I prefer being in a room teaching people one to one, because it's like we have like max 10 people at a boot camp, so it's not a huge seminar thing, and people pay $10,000 for 3 days to be there, so it is quite lucrative for us. And then we decided to do online, and we sold more seats online. But the thing is, what I found was it was very tiring doing these things online, because consistently week on week you have to do this coaching online week by week. And a lot of people are doing that right now. They're going online and they're doing videos, they're doing that. But I'm thinking, wow, we're all trying to get off our phones, but now we're getting back onto our phones and the internet. So what's really changed? So it's interesting, because for me, it was like I was doing that because I didn't want to be too engrossed in running an 100% online based business. But running an online based business is tiring. It can be tiring. If you're consistently having to put out things online, especially with Zoom, you're doing Zoom calls every week and twice a week, and it is very, very tiring. But what I found was it gave me a time to experiment. So we were launching programs nearly every month, to be honest with you, and we were doing very, very well. But then I got burnt out, basically, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't. There's only so much you can do consistently by doing these things. But then what I started doing was I created online programs, and basically I put them in my mastermind group for people to have access to. So there is the one good thing with that is you develop your own IP, which basically you can make money off again and again and again. So it is a money maker in one way. I always do my programs live because I like doing them live, and then I record them, and then I resell them, or I put them into a membership site, which basically is automated. So it's pretty good. But I think those who have pivoted and have gone online have done really, really well. I mean, I know e-commerce is blown through the roof. A lot of people are doing really, really well with e-com. A lot of people have slowed down in terms of the corporate sector. I know there's not much spending, or people are like, are people still doing stuff in that sector? Because a lot of my stuff previously was corporate consulting, which I don't do that anymore. I sold that business in 2017. So yes, I think there's loads of opportunities to do things now, especially with startups. I think you could launch a venture very, very quickly right now, and you can be very successful if the targeting is right. But I think it's changed the whole landscape for existing businesses that were out there that are not there anymore. And people's psychologically, people aren't ready to get back to normal. A lot of people are not prepared to go back to normality. And to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to ever get back to normal. I think we've got now what is called a new normal, and this is what it is moving forward. So it's going to be an interesting time, because the whole world has changed, and people are waiting for it to get back to normal, but it will never get back to normal. I think it will just be. But the thing is, restrictions. It's going to be very sad actually moving forward, looking at what all these restrictions in place and people just being more cautious. Yeah, it's going to be difficult for a lot of people. But like I say, with these sort of things always bring opportunities as well. So a lot of the big billion-dollar unicorns were created during recessions. So it's interesting times.
Certainly interesting. There's so much to unpick there. One of the things that I absolutely love about your interpretation of this time is it brings together, you said that one of the things that has led to your success is that you love to test and experiment.
Yes.
And it seems like because everything has moved online and the pace of business has changed so much, it's given you this opportunity to take this love of testing and experimenting and apply it in a very intense situation. And it's really exciting that you've done so well. I love that. So you said that going forward, everything's going to change. What are you going to be doing going forward? What are your plans?
I had a couple of ideas that I was working on pre-pandemic, but a lot of them involved the physicality of events, because I love events. I love people. I'm a people-centric person. I love to be in the presence of people. So a lot of things that we were creating and we're looking to hopefully launch just haven't really materialized at the moment, because we don't know what the situation is now until next year. But I'm always about building relationships. And, one of the other things I do as a hobby is I broker luxury assets like watches and stuff, like watches and cars. It's a hobby of mine.
That's so cool. I love that. What a way to use your skill set for something totally different.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? So I don't just broker deals. I broker like luxury assets as well. So one of the things I'm working on right now is starting to play golf. I used to play golf many, many years ago. I never got into it, but I want to get back into it because that sort of clientele is adept to what I deliver. And I don't want to set up a shop online and say I want to do this. And I'm more of a relationship type of person. So I like to meet people, and if I can provide them and broker things like watches and luxury cars for them, I do that because it's fun, and it's like I don't need the money, but I like to do stuff so I can get involved. I always find a way to get something I want without really having to pay for it. and brokering does that, having the ability to be in those areas, or being in the right place at the right time. So yeah, there are still opportunities out there, so I'm just looking and seeing what other opportunities are out there to basically do the things that I enjoy, and get paid for as well as a bonus, I guess. Hey.
As Lisa talks about testing, and it's clearly such a
Yeah.
huge theme for you, it's not just testing, hey, does this business strategy or does this life strategy work? It's also testing to see, is this right for me? Do I feel aligned
Correct.
with this strategy, right? And when I hear you talk about, oh, you're just brokering luxury assets, like, I know you well enough already to know that that's so you. It just fits you so well. And so it's so important when we think about a life or a business strategy to not just think, is this a good strategy? It's important to say, will I be good at this? Do I know my strengths well enough to know that I'm enough of a relationship builder that this JV model could work for me, right?
I think so. I think everyone should do that. I mean, it's like some of us get caught in the day-to-day of running a business or creating a business, or launching a business because we think that's what everyone else is doing and it's doing really well. But I
Yes.
think you have to find your own core strength, and you have to enjoy it as well, to be honest with you. You have to be able to go out there and say, okay, and not only that, you make a difference as well. You can make money while making a difference.
Yeah.
So, I think it makes sense to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
legacy as well. You leave behind a good footprint in the world. I know this is all boring stuff and we're talking like we're old folks, but but I think we've been around the block, basically. We've seen what happens in the real business world, and I think it's the enjoyment more of doing something that fulfills
Mm,
you, and then the
mm.
money is a bonus. But I guess everyone's an individual, really. People have different goals. Like I said, when I was a lot younger, I was just all about creating wealth, and that was it. But I didn't realize that with like they say, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So there you go.
Well, Sohail, now that we start to come towards the end of our time together, a question we love to ask all of our guests, and you've answered it a little bit, but I'm going to bring it up again because I can't
Sure.
wait for your answer. In this tricky moment of a pandemic where there's so much chaos going on and so much uncertainty, it's important to still find fulfillment and fun in the day to
Yes.
day. And so curious, what have you been doing for fun in the middle of all of this? How have you found fulfillment?
That's really funny, because one of the things that I do consistently is I work on projects like building projects, for example. So I'm a keen constructor. So I like constructing things. So one of the things I do with my son, for example, is that he's really big into Lego. So one of the things that I like doing is building Lego cities. So I like building constructions and huge sets. So one of the things I do is I really enjoy, and that's what I've been doing. During the pandemic, we've been doing things on the business side, but I think, like Lisa was saying, it's really helped bring families together, and it's really helped bring people together. So I've managed to find time, within my schedule, even though I'm semi-retired, but I've managed to find time in my schedule to actually connect with the people that I haven't connected with properly in the past. So I think
Mm.
most of my time has been spent really doing that and really getting back to reaching out to people that I haven't had the opportunity to do that, just to see how they are, and also
Oh,
rebuild those relationships with people that I lost out on, years ago. And it's been good, especially coming back to London, seeing old friends, seeing a lot of people that I used to know, and building those relationships. So yeah, I think it's been there are plus points, and it also makes you realize a lot of other things in the world, because you're not thrust into the day to day, like we normally are with our normal routines. Your routines shifted, and you have a different routine. So
mm.
your mode of thinking is different. So I think we should all be grateful, and realize, in times like this, that we are very fortunate, to be honest with you, even though a lot of other people haven't been. I think we are very fortunate. So
So much goodness in that answer.
yeah.
I love Lego too. Not gonna lie, was a huge fan of Lego, and you're
Cool.
inspiring me to go play with Lego again. And
Go
I
do
think
it.
I think one of the things that's so wonderful about it is not only is it a way for people to build together, but it's very imaginative. And such a wonderful way to bond with kids is storytelling. So you're not only building, you're also telling a story with Lego.
It's great. It's great fun.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Sohail, I know that you're semi-retired, but you still have a boot camp possibly going on. Is there anything you'd like to tell our audience of CEOs about anything that you're working on that you'd love to share?
Yeah, just two things really. One thing is if anyone wants access to all my joint venture online programs for free, you can get them through my online mastermind, which is a very cost-effective route rather than going purchasing my programs individually. And you can go to jointventuremastermind.com, and there you can get access to over $19,000 worth of my joint venture programs, which people have paid thousands and thousands for. If anyone's ever interested in attending one of my brokering boot camps in Las Vegas, go to brokeringbootcamp.com. We're hopefully, fingers crossed, scheduling one for the end of the year, and then we'll continue after that until I lose interest, which I think will be never. Who doesn't like going to Vegas, right? Especially like 4 times a year. There you go.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Awesome, Sohail. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Such a blast to chat with you and learn from you today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.